I have to go to the other position. I'll come back with you after. So I'll go with the member for Fredericton South, leader of his party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After being out of this House for more than 3 months, we recently learned that the legislature will sit for only 5 weeks this spring. Sitting days in New Brunswick have trended down dramatically over the years, and it appears that that trend is continuing under the current government, Mr. Speaker. On Terry Segay's political panel on CBC last May, referring to the former Liberal government's legislative calendar, the member for Riverview said, and I quote, "With the reduced sitting days, you don't have the pointed question period. You don't get a chance to put other bills on the floor that would bring the government to account." Well, I couldn't agree more, Mr. Speaker. Can the Premier tell us how the members of this House are supposed to carry out the people's business with so few sitting days?
The Honourable the Premier.
So, thank you for the question, and Mr. Speaker, it's my understanding that this schedule that's been put together was an all-party agreement of what would go forward, and the leader of the Green Party would be one of those participants in that exercise. So we said, and I know I don't know that if every bit of the schedule is complete at this point. We know what the spring session is looking like over this next while, but if there are opportunities to go further and discuss what's needed, I mean, we're open to doing that. But I guess I am surprised at the comments, because being one of the committee members that was working on this very thing, the schedule, I would have expected if that was an issue, it would have been brought forward within the committee, Mr. Speaker, not in here. Thank you.
The member for Fredericton South and leader of his party.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, we brought issues forward to committee, absolutely, and we didn't agree to the schedule. Mr. Speaker, in a CBC article on August 21st last year, referring to the number of sitting days in the legislature last spring, the Premier himself said at the time, this Premier said at that time, "I can't imagine we would stay at that level. That is the lowest sitting days that have ever been in the legislature." And he was referring to the Liberals' sitting days. And yet, that's exactly what has happened under his leadership. He and his entire caucus signed the declaration of intent to cooperate in this legislature initiated by my caucus. I don't see how cooperation can occur when we spend so much time out of the legislature. In his election platform, he wrote that elected officials are not allowed to be as strong as they could and should be in the legislature. I want to be the Premier, he said, who says, "No, we don't do it that way anymore. We're going to do it differently." Well, Mr. Speaker, here's a chance. Will the Premier bring his proposed legislative calendar to the floor of this chamber for debate and adoption?
The Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, you know, this isn't really a newsflash that we're in a minority government situation, and we're not the majority in the committee either. The committee rules and regulations around the sitting of the House is a consensus amongst the committee. I mean, I'm not in a position to arbitrate some particular arrangement, because that's what the committee's for. And if this needs to go back to the committee and have further discussion, then I encourage that, and decide what makes sense going forward. But in this scenario, as we're working together in the minority House, we have to find solutions together. It's expected of us, not only in this particular issue, how many days we sit, or how many committees we hold, but in our ultimate decision-making and our ultimate decisions around what's best for the province. So I would ask, you know, the leader of the Green Party, if he wants to recall the committee and have discussions, then by all means do that, and let the members on that committee work to a solution that makes sense for the group. Thank you.